Ping Ban, a 69-year-old Singaporean businessman, was found guilty for beating his ex-wife to death and dumping her body in Perth's Swan River. According to the Australian Institute of Criminology, one woman dies almost every week at the hands of a current or former partner. It is time we have this conversation in Perth about why domestic violence is still occurring in the homes of many. Today I'll be heading into the streets of Perth to discuss this issue and find out what WA has to say. What do you think this extreme level of domestic violence is still occurring?
I'm not sure. I think there's probably a lot of lack of education about domestic violence and the role that men play, I guess, in perpetrating a lot of it and, understanding what kind of impact it has on families and community.
I think it is because we live in such a patriarchal society worldwide. It's just accepted that violence against women is okay. It's just happening so much around us all the time that it's become the norm, and now we're trying to fight against that. I guess there's been more publicity around standing up and not accepting it, but I think we've got a long way to go. So I think it's just become normal since time began that violence against women was acceptable.
Yeah, there's lots of cultural issues with that, I imagine. But fundamentally, why it comes down to violence, why does one person hurt another person? And that comes down to the individual. They're in a dark place themselves. They're probably not very empathetic towards themselves, and so they can't be towards other people. And some people keep that at below the behavioural level, but for other people it starts to act out and they start hurting other people.
As far as domestic violence goes, I think it's just not addressed properly. It's a cultural issue. If it's condemned hard enough and properly, people will stop doing it, but it seems to be accepted and as a part of life and swept under the carpet.
Do you think that cultural differences have something to do with why that happened as well? Because in some countries it's normalized, it's a normal thing, it's not really a big issue, but then when you come here it's not something that's tolerated as much, but it does still happen. So do you think that cultural differences had something to do with that as well?
Yes, I think there's probably a good chance of that in this case. Yeah.
Why do you think that some women are quiet about it? Some people may think that they're quiet about it, or, why didn't they ask for help or something like that? Why do you think that there's a silence amongst it?
I would say it's embarrassing for them. They have to admit that there's problems in their relationship, and they also think not enough of themselves to speak up, or they're protecting their children. They don't want to leave because of their children.
I think it can be really difficult, particularly when you're in a relationship with someone who you think that you know or you trust or you love. I guess it can be really difficult to kind of go out and talk about it. It's probably also difficult in terms of a safety perspective. You might be worried that, if you go and tell someone, the perpetrator might actually come back and do something worse to you.
How do you think the conversation can be improved on spreading awareness about domestic violence?
We just have to talk about it. It's not talked about enough. Things pop up on the news and they go away, but there's not a continuing conversation on how to address this.
It's a good question. I guess a lot of it, I think, has to do with empowering men and engaging men to actually understand how domestic violence started and how they are really part of the solution, I think.
This has been Miranda for Undercurrent. I am here at the 2018 National Conference for the National Ethnic and Multicultural Broadcasters Council. Today we'll be taking an inside scoop as to what happens at these events and also speaking to some of the speakers on the main topic of shaping media diversity.
Welcome to the NEMBC, the National Ethnic and Multicultural Broadcasters Council. Contributes to media diversity in Australia by maintaining and connecting people to their language, culture and identity.
Και τώρα έχουμε την Άννα Βύση στην τηλεφωνική μας γραμμή. Καλησπέρα, Άννα.
Hello and welcome to the Multicultural AFL Football Show. I am Vanessa Gatica. I'm originally from Mexico.
Thanks to Lockerbie West, we got funding to bring people in from Broadland. Thanks to 6EBA. We have Eddie here from Orange. Further us away from Townsville. Canberra, they've sent almost 20 people here. South Australia, we've got Brenda. She was one of the people that wrote our constitution back in 1984.
What are you aiming to achieve by having this conference?
Well, I've learnt that what you do when you have a conference is it's not just a talk fest, you come up with outcomes. That's really, really important. So we do things prior to the conference. So we have up on our website, we want media representatives, we want to do employment pathways. We're doing a project here called Speak My Language, which is about delivering aged care information to radio programs, ethnic community radio programs, in language. We're doing an AFL program, which is on community TV, produced from Channel 31 and over here in Perth as well. So we're looking at making links and synergies to all of those projects that we do so we get outcomes.
A quarter of the Australian population is born overseas, and half of us have a parent at least who's born overseas. So we are fundamentally a diverse country, but the strength of that kind of heritage, the colonial kind of white heritage, is maintained often in the media, and it's the reflection of who we are in the media that actually generates this imagined community of what the nation state actually is. And the less we see diversity represented there, the less likely we are to accept diversity just in our day-to-day interactions with people.
I think there needs to be more representation of individuals from diverse backgrounds, and it's not about just having them there, like the face of them or the appearance of them. It's more to do with the content writing as well, because the narratives that we're hearing, it's lacking that authenticity of these stories to come from individuals who've actually faced these challenges. So I think that's the diversity that we need to aspire towards in our media. People, on the other hand, they are a bit curious. They would like to know a bit more about you, where you've come from. Mainstream Australians as well, they just need to be a bit more open, welcoming, accepting.
A current producer and broadcaster at the 3ZZZ radio station in Melbourne, covering 70 languages, or producing programs in 70 languages, and just 150 plus communities. So I'm involved in the sports, the coverage of local, national and international sports for 3ZZZ, and also for NEMBC and all the programs NEMBC are running, like AFL program, A-League program, so I'm part of these projects.
What is the importance of having cultural diversity in sports coverage?
It's everything. Most of people here, we were not born in Australia. Try to promote other sports like footy, cricket, other sports that they are not well known by non-Anglo-Saxon communities, and we try to engage them to love the sports, all sort of sports, basically.
What are some of the issues facing inclusion?
If you go back through historically, even in Australia, it's been for years and years and years that there has been some kind of inclusion. So the question's not really, is it inclusion or exclusion, but what kind of inclusion? Is it good inclusion? Is it good representation? Or is it just going to be stereotypes? As well as finding new ways to bring people in, for people to actually feel confident that they can actually participate in that space.
Indigenous broadcasting and ethnic broadcasting, we need to have our own funding stream directly into a funding group and take out the people that we like to call the middle tier within that, like the Community Broadcasting Foundation or even the whole government funding arrangement. I think the funding should come back into a central pool, and Indigenous people look after their own Indigenous broadcasting interests, the same as what ethnic people should be doing as well. I think we're big enough to leave the house, as they say. We're big enough and good enough to be able to look after our own financial interests, and we should be allowed to go out and set up those proper organisational departments ourselves and manage them ourselves.
Kia ora, tēnā koe, tēnā korua, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Tararua te mauna, ko Waikawa te awa, ko Tainui te waka. Ko tahi tanga o te iwi of Ngāti Wehi, te rangi tāwhia, tihei mori ora. I come from the mountains of Tararua, from the rivers of Waikawa, from the canoe of Tainui. My tribe is Ngāti Wehi. My name is Tiaraiti. That's who I am. And I've been in this industry for 31 years.
What attracted you to Indigenous broadcasting?
I think Indigenous broadcasting, whether it's I'm in the Aboriginal field, or I'm the general manager for 3KND Coolin, Deadly in Melbourne, but I think Indigenous people worldwide have the same issues. We are the kaitiaki. The kaitiaki are the caretakers of this planet.
This has been Miranda for Undercurrent. Today I'll be sitting down with the Director of Public Relations and Marketing for the Organization of African Communities Western Australia, Alphonse Mulumba. Racism, violence, and many other issues are faced by African Australians, and we'll be discussing how the organization aims to improve the living conditions of Africans here in Australia.
The Organization of African Communities of Western Australia, OSCWA or OSC, started basically from an understanding that Africans needs to come together, and we need an organization that plays the role of a platform and also an umbrella organization for all these other small community organizations. So it started unofficially in 2012 and was inaugurated in late 2014. So the aim is basically to provide services in terms of settlement services, in terms of advocacy, in terms of lobbying and capacity building support to Africans living in Western Australia. We believe that Africans have a positive contribution to make to Western Australia and to Australia in general. But sometimes we do not tend to make that contribution just because we don't know how to do that. But of course, on an individual basis, you have African doctors, you have African nurses, you have African cleaners, you have African plumbers, you have African lawyers, you have African members of parliament who are actually making also their own individual contribution to Australia. But one thing that was very clear is that there are certain things in the Australian community that we need to address that as Africans, and no one is going to speak on our behalf except ourselves. For example, the image that many have of Africa out there. They think of an Africa that is poverty-stricken, that is stricken by war, war-torn, and all that, and forgetting all these other contributions that many in our community are actually making. So our aim then was to reframe that, to redefine Africa in the minds of many, and showcase a positive Africa out there. We've managed to put together a few programs, such as the Stop the Violence program, which actually teaches some of our young people how to behave in society. We have another program which aims to work with Africans who are in prisons, for example, to teach them and to show them that, yeah, you find yourself in this place, but you can get out there and make something significant with your life. We've had trainings, we've had cross-cultural sort of mentorship programs. So it's not just about the problems. It is also how do we solve these problems, and I emphasize in doing that we cannot work by ourselves. We of course work with many organizations out there. I just want to pass across that racism does affect our members, but we do not think that it is only an African problem. So what we do is we can only work with our members and also lobby as much as we can to make sure that the impacts are reduced, and hopefully one day we will have an Australia where a black kid, an Aboriginal kid, a Chinese kid will sit at one table, make decisions based on their heart and based on what they know, and not be judged based on the color of their skin.
This is Miranda Chirinda reporting for Undercurrent. The loss of 3 Africans in the last couple of weeks to suicide has sparked conversation about mental health in African communities. Today I'll be speaking to makeup artist Rumbidzai Mudzengi, who is a mental health activist, as well as Keith Tapiwanashe Makuni, about how they aim to use their voices for change. And what are your thoughts on the current state of mental health in African communities when things like these are happening?
I guess my thoughts on that would just be how crazy that is, that literally 3 people can die from suicide and it's not even making any news. And I know that a lot of the times we're like, well, you know, it should make the Australian news and all these things. But then we're also a community and we spread everything else. Why are we not talking about this? There were people that were commenting and saying, well, it's just attention seeking. It's just, it's their own fault. And I was thinking, that is just, sorry to say, but ignorant. And it's such a shame that in 2019, we're still looking at something like suicide as attention seeking, as, oh, it's your fault, as, oh my God, why would you do that to God? And it's like, well, it's a real disease and we need to deal with it. And it comes from obviously going through having mental issues. And that's why people get to a place where they do things like that.
Currently, I will say a lot of people are suffering in silence. Obviously there's a need for help, and a lot of people are even worried to speak about it, because once you speak about it, even the people around you, they don't know what to do and how to assist you. So I'll say there's a great deal right now currently, but what's exciting at the moment is we are seeing a lot of people surfacing up and also speaking out.
Personally, I suppose my stand on the issue is different, because literally 3 months ago I tried committing suicide and I ended up being in hospital for a whole month after trying to commit suicide, and 2 days into being in hospital I tried again. So I had 3 suicide attempts just in a space of a week. It takes a lot for a person to get to that stage. No one's speaking about why people get to a place where they want to commit suicide. No one is being open about how it feels to have mental health issues.
I'm a firm believer of a clear communication between people, and I'm a firm believer that everything is fixable. So culture is a big deal, but it all starts with a dialogue, and also accepting that we are in a different environment where there is higher dominance of multiculturalism, which is not our only culture. So we also need to be open to it, to new ideas, to new ways, and also be sensitive towards what's happening around us, and to be hungry to use the resources available. So it's a dialogue that flows from the generation of our parents to the current generation of ours, and also looking down on the upcoming generation. If culture is going to hinder us and hinder a lot of people from not getting help and be stuck and stagnant in a negative situation, then there's a problem. Let's communicate effectively, let's look out for each other, and I'll encourage someone, find someone close to you. If you're scared, come out and talk to someone in strict confidence and privacy.
You need to surround yourself with people that understand your journey and that are patient with you, and people that are willing to see you get through whatever you're going through. Another thing for me has just, you need to find an outlet. You can't keep that stuff in. I kept my depression in I've been depressed for over 8 years. My therapist to literally say to me, you just didn't start being depressed now, right? And I was like, well, no, I am depressed just now. Like, I was fine all the other time, but it takes a lot for you to get to a place where you can sort of acknowledge that you've been going through that. You need to find an outlet. So whatever it is, literally, if it's dancing, if it's music, if it's writing, whatever it is.
Next year we are deviating from a lot of social media. We will try to use social media to advertise our events. We have 12 events that we have planned for each month, just to get young people to come together, make it a one-on-one, bring it so close, and start to mentor and help each other to address some of these issues on a personal level.
This is Miranda reporting for Undercurrent. Child abuse, mental health, and peer pressure are some of the issues that are rarely discussed within African communities, and sometimes even in the church. Members within these communities often suffer in silence as they have no one to speak with or for them. Today I'll be sitting down with Michael Tumbare, who is a member of a church named Forward in Faith Ministries, and on the 8th of December, this year, they'll be holding a seminar for leaders, elders, and teachers discussing child abuse, mental health, peer pressure, and dealing with disabled children. Stay tuned. So how long have you been working with children within the church?
I can say about 14 years now.
And what attracted you to working with children in this department?
When I joined the church, I had no close friends. So by that time, my closest friends were children. So I would hang out with children and talk and have games until the pastor noticed. And he just said, well, you look very much connected to the children more than the other teachers at that time. So I got encouraged to join in. By then, I didn't know how much work it was involved. But after learning, I realized this is a very good field to work in the church over the years. I've been here for 10 years now, and I've realized we have an increase in the number of children that are actually going through these very same issues. So we need our parents, particularly from African background, to be equipped and know what to do when they're dealing with these children. And also even our teachers within the church who are teaching these children on every Sunday, they need to be equipped with the knowledge how best they can handle. There are things within culture which encroach into religion as well. So we are not saying we throw out the whole lot of culture and we just remain with religion, but we need to strike a balance where we say some of the issues that are within our culture needs to be challenged, needs to be looked into. We need discussions over those issues.
And when you look at people who are now youths, you know, who came from the child evangelism and the young generations, and now they are youths, and they never had this kind of event happen. And now they're dealing with depression or suicide, or maybe they are, you know, alcoholics. What would be your advice to them?
Well, you know, being people of faith, it's never too late. It's never too late to do anything. I can reference one of our pastors who is of Aboriginal background. And I remember he came to church when he was actually running away from rehab. So he popped into church and realized, oh, these people are singing, what's going on? So from that time, his journey started. But if you look at him now, he's a changed man. You know, but it wasn't too late for him to do something about it. So from a perspective of people of faith, you know, my Bible tells me there's nothing impossible with God. So it doesn't matter how far you have gone, the journey should start at that moment. We are having this seminar, we are targeting mainly our teachers within the church. And like you said before, they are mainly from Africa. So what we're targeting is we want to talk to them. We want to invite experts that can speak to them on issues of mental health, on issues of drugs, various issues affecting youth in Australia. And when we create this platform is just an introductory platform. We want to have more and more of these seminars, which even includes the parents themselves. Like I said, we're dealing with teachers for now, but we also want to deal with the parents who are having the children at home. How can they deal with these issues? So it's kind of an introductory seminar where we are going to be exploring a lot of things, including the African culture. You know, how can we mix the African culture? We are now in Australia. How can we deal with this so that we can help our children?
This is Miranda reporting for Undercurrent.